This is a map of the Democracy Index. The blue countries are the most democratic on the planet. According to the experts surveyed by The Economist, in these countries, people have the most rights and freedoms. What is interesting here is that in the modern realm of democracy in the United States, less than 100 years ago, 10% of the population had to ride separate buses and dine in designated restaurants, and their children to attend special schools. Imagine that an Olympic champion returns home to his homeland, and he is not allowed to go to a restaurant because of his skin color. This is not some kind of fiction, but a real story from the life of the legendary boxer Muhammad Ali. And probably it is no secret to anyone that on the way to their democracy, the United States has gone from slavery and the laws of racial segregation to massive protests for the rights of Afro-Americans. But what is most important is that the Civil War, the modern politics of diversity in movies and TV shows, and even the bowing of the knee before sports matches are very closely related to the struggle for equality and democracy. I will prove to you that there is no talk of any aspiration for justice here, that now, that hundreds of years ago, the world is ruled exclusively by money. And you will see for yourself when you listen to our amazing story. With the abolition of slavery in the United States began the era of Reconstruction of the South, the refusal of the economy from slave labor, and the integration of Black people into American society. A very simple thing was done for this. With 2 amendments to the Constitution, former slaves were given citizenship and the right to vote in the elections. And this was a clear calculation. First, the base of voters increased by 5 million people. And who were the new citizens voting for? Of course, for the Republican Party, which gave them freedom. Secondly, no one was going to work for free anymore, and the planters had to hire people for money. So the United States was forced to think now, not about where to buy as many slaves as possible, but how to increase the efficiency of collecting the same cotton so as not to get burned. But this is on paper. Everything is so smooth and beautiful. In fact, the life of former slaves after the war has not changed much. In this sense, they are little different from yesterday's peasants in Russia, where at about the same time the serfdom right was abolished. Neither the slaves nor the serfdom peasants had the professional skills to get a normal job. They didn't even have savings to learn this skill. They often stayed to work with their former masters, selling their labor for no money. They were also not very happy because the profitability of their agricultural business fell. Some Afro-Americans went to cities, but without finding a job there, became thugs, engaged in begging and small thefts. Naturally, ordinary citizens didn't like it very much. Therefore, when in 1877 the North finally withdrew its troops from the southern states, the politics of racial segregation began. For example, some states introduced a tax on voting, which the majority of Black people could not afford. Other laws forbade former slaves to live in separate areas of the city. Third, Black people were given separate places on buses. These laws were called Jim Crow laws in honor of the then popular cartoon Afro-American. In the minds of the inhabitants of the South, this law was strongly rooted in the image of an illiterate, lazy, and involuntary person who should not be among white people. And for violating these laws, there was a very strict punishment. Black people lived in separate areas. They had their own schools, public transport, cafes, and hotels. Even the Bible, on which the oath was brought in court, was different for white and Black people so that witnesses did not touch the same subject. Often, if a Black person was suspected of a crime or violation of segregation norms, then a trial was arranged over him. The crowd took on the role of a judge, jury, and executioner, ignoring legal procedures and the rights of the suspect. This practice was called the lynch trials. The most famous lynch tragedy occurred in 1955 in a small town in Mississippi when a Black teenager was caught by 2 adult men and deprived of his life, and then the judge admitted that there was no charges against him. In the same year, another situation occurred. In Alabama, a Black woman refused to give way to a white passenger in a bus. For this, she was arrested and forced to pay a fine of $10 for violating public order. After this event, black residents of the city refused to use them. This protest lasted a year, and the bus company suffered huge losses. The leader of this boycott was a young preacher in the local church, Martin Luther King Jr., still unknown to anyone, but later became a national figure in the United States. In 1963, he performed in Washington in front of a crowd of 250,000 people who gathered to support the rights of black people. He said,
"Just as I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today."
He spoke about the vision of a country where people will not be judged by the color of their skin. His words inspired millions of people, not only in the United States, but all over the world. After the Washington March, the U.S. government adopted a law on civil rights, which prohibited segregation in public places. And in the same year, Martin Luther King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. It must be said that not only public excitement influenced the American people, but also the American people as representatives of a free, democratic world. Well, what freedom can you talk about when there is segregation according to a racial mark in the country? Therefore, the next presidents of the United States decisively fought against racial segregation, despite the resistance of the South. But on the other hand, can you, with a couple of laws, make a difference?